Hello, and welcome to Working Lunch, the Slow Chambers weekly series where we take some time to talk with our community leaders and help you connect to some of the things happening in our region. I'm Jim D'Antona, President and CEO of the Slow Chamber, and today you'll get to be a part of my conversation with Ryan Caldwell, the CEO of Wacker Wealth Partners, a financial planning firm here in Slow. In his nearly 20-year career as a certified financial planner, Ryan has worked with all types of individuals, from executives to teachers, farmers, and retirees, helping them create a financial plan for the future. Today, he not only spends his time poring over stock market and investment charts, he is a highly engaged community member who has lent his expertise and guidance to organizations including Reach Central Coast, United Way, the Slow Food Bank, Leadership Slow, and we were lucky enough to have him as a board chair for the Slow Chamber back in 2017. Having been in the industry for nearly 20 years, he's been side by side with clients through a lot of ups and downs in the market. I'm looking forward to talking to him today about how he got his start as an advisor, how he approaches his role as business and community leader, and of course, getting his take on some of the more unusual stock market events we've seen in the last few weeks and months. Ryan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure. As you know, I can never say no to the chamber. So.
We know, and we always appreciate it, and we always abuse it. So much fun. But as we get started today, first and foremost, where are you zooming in from?
I'm zooming in from my office here in San Luis Obispo.
So has your life changed much since the quarantine has come in, and what have you and your family been up to?
Yeah, life has changed quite a bit, I would say. I do come into the office every day still. We've got about a third of our staff still working here in the office. We have about 1,000 square feet per person. So I would say that we're adequately socially distanced. But yeah, for me, I'm coming into the office every day. Work looks very similar, although a lot of our client interaction is over Zoom. We're actually not holding client meetings. Our doors are locked. We're really trying to be protective of both our clients and our team here so that we can continue to be a service.
And how about your family life? Is everybody at home? The kids?
Yeah. Unfortunately, my wife Amanda has borne the brunt of the pandemic on our family, and she is a teacher at home with 3 kids. My oldest is at Laguna, and my youngest is in 2nd grade, and I have another daughter who is in 5th grade. So they're all at home, Zooming in their rooms on laptops, and the Wi-Fi is going down, and there's sometimes people in the background hammering, depending on the day, and it's a difficult learning environment. But I'm amazed at how resilient they are. I mean, it's been really impressive.
Well, it's so awesome to hear, and I know folks, especially those at home, who have to kind of work through it, doing amazing work trying to get through that. So let's just kind of kick off and figure out, tell me about your roots on the Central Coast. Were you born and raised here, or was there something that attracted you to this region?
Yeah, I wasn't born here, but mostly raised. My mom actually moved up to Paso Robles when I was about 9 years old. And we moved from Southern California. I was born in Torrance and grew up in kind of that South Bay area of LA. And we moved up, we moved out of the city and into Paso. We lived about 15, 20 minutes outside of town on a couple of acres, and quickly got horses and goats. And my life changed pretty drastically at that point. And so, yeah, I spent the rest of my growing up years here on the Central Coast, growing up in Paso with lots of animals and lots of hard work.
Oh, it sounds pretty awesome. And I think that was the right call a long time ago. And even for me, 3 years ago, leaving, even a better call. So I think your family got you to the right spot. So growing up, did you walk around with a Wall Street Journal under your arm, or know you wanted to lead a financial planning investment firm from Paso there?
No, I had no idea. Matter of fact, growing up, I wanted to go into medicine. My mom worked in the dental industry, and so that was kind of the most tangible career path for me, was to become a doctor. I was always good at math and science, and so I wanted to help people with my life, and so that seemed like a good fit. But I did have a little bit of a kind of a nerd streak growing up. I'd find myself on Saturday mornings watching C-SPAN and watching the news, while most kids, couldn't care less. So from an early age, I was very interested in kind of geopolitical events. I also was fortunate to have an uncle who, for Christmas one year gave me some Hasbro stock instead of buying me the remote control car I wanted. And, from that point forward, I was always getting the paper out and looking for where, the price of my stock was and learned about the stock market, even though I didn't really understand it, but learned to follow stocks in that way. So I think that planted the seeds for, what has now become a career. So grateful for that.
Now you went to school at Cal Poly. Did you get a degree in finance, business? How did you?
That would have been too simple, Jim. No, as I said, I'd always wanted to go into medicine, so I got a degree in biology, and I got to the end of my undergrad at Cal Poly and realized in my last year I really don't want to go to medical school and grad school. I really just want to go out and work. I was just itching to go and get a job, and so I quickly kind of scrambled to make something of my bio degree. It's a very broad degree. It's really, really difficult. But it's not very useful unless you concentrate in something. And so I tried to concentrate in something at the end. It was somewhat of a failed attempt, and that lack of focus, I think, allowed me to really to think about what I wanted to do early in my 20s, because really the sky was the limit at that point.
And so do you find how did you get then into the idea that this isn't the investment area is not something you just kind of walk in one day and say, hey, I think I want to, play around in the stock market. How did you get from, biology to business or into where you are today?
Yeah, I got a job through a friend, working for a business that was, somewhat related to the banking industry. And that just really expanded my mind as to what was out there. For me, that was a really good thing growing up, with a single mom in Paso. I didn't have a huge sense for what was available. So that first job really expanded my horizons. And then, when I was kind of done there, I really had the opportunity to say, well, what do I want to do? What do I like doing? I interviewed some people, some family friends, and then decided to pursue the investment industry. And I found a firm up in the Bay Area at the time that was willing to hire a bio guy and teach me what I needed to know on the job. And of course, from there, I took, additional coursework at night and audited classes at Cal Poly. I audited a accounting class at Cal Poly to kind of shore up some of those skills. So I've learned a lot along the way, but somewhat of a circuitous path.
Well, so then if you were up at the Bay Area, then you somehow got back here. Was there a direct path to Wacker, or is that where you've been all along, or was that even a circuitous route to that point?
No, it's where I've been since we've been back in SLO. I would say that, my wife and I were in the Bay Area enjoying life, but we knew that we never felt at home there. We always kind of had this longing to get back to the Central Coast. And so we were looking at, Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, and I was talking to some companies, and then my wife got pregnant, and suddenly we had, a clock ticking, and we knew that, if we had a baby up in the Bay Area, it was going to be really difficult to leave. So full court press, trying to get back to SLO or Santa Barbara. Actually, that was another spot on the short list. We have some family there, but there aren't a lot of, I knew I wanted to work at a firm that, had more than 3 people. And I knew I wanted to work for a firm that, was fee only, meaning, they don't take commissions. They only work on a fiduciary basis with their clients. I had some things that were really important to me, and that narrows the list in SLO, or at least it did back then, pretty severely. So I reached out to Bob Wacker, said, hey, this is who I am. I would love to work for you. And then, we interacted a little bit, but 6 months later, randomly, he emailed me and said, are you still interested? And within a couple of weeks, I had the position, and we moved down here. My wife was 8.5 months pregnant. And we moved down here just in the nick of time. So I'm really grateful for making all that happen right there.
Well, and so you mentioned, we obviously have to mention Bob Wacker, the previous CEO and the namesake of Wacker Wealth Partners. And obviously you got that job and you moved in, but now you're leading that organization. Can you tell us a little bit about that leadership transition and maybe some advice you'd have for others out there as they look to maybe succession planning?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big topic, but yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit. I would say that for us and our firm, we had kind of an evolution where Bob originally sold the firm to a regional bank as kind of his career path, and the banking industry underwent some challenges in 08, 09, 2010. And those challenges resulted in us having the opportunity to buy our firm back. And so Bob invited, 7 other people, a number of us that had been working at the firm at the time, to buy the firm back with him. And so that's how I became a shareholder in the company. And that opportunity gave me access to some of the management decisions, some of the more leadership opportunities here at the firm. And once I kind of got my nose into those issues, it was really hard to be content, without continuing to be involved. And so as time went on, Bob, looking to just have a little bit more flexibility, he's still very engaged in the firm and really has no intention of retiring, really enjoys working with clients and helping people, but wanted a little bit more flexibility, and the ability to travel, be present for his grandkids. And so recognized that the firm really needed, full-time, 100% engaged leadership. And that's when, he made the decision to transition the leadership of the firm. I got the support of our shareholder group, and the rest is history. There's probably things we could have done better as part of that transition. There's things that we did really, really well. But overall, I'm settling into my shoes and really having a great time leading such a fabulous company.
Well, it seems that you've carried forward the mission of Wacker Wealth Partners and how you deal with clients that maybe Bob had set forth. And so now that you're at the leadership, that top leadership role, what do you look for when you're hiring someone new to be part of the team, be part of the mission? What makes somebody a great advisor with your team?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think is really special about our firm is that, the folks that work here are genuinely care for people. It's one of our core values. It's on the wall, and it's a little bit cliche, but I think it is really true. And it's hard to ignore it, despite the fact that it's a cliche. But we genuinely care for people, the ones we know, the ones we don't know. We want to help people succeed financially. We want to reduce their financial stress, their anxiety around investments, around whether or not they're going to have enough to retire. Like, that's what gets us up in the morning. And so, to your question, when we go and hire people to add to this special group of people that genuinely care for folks, I'm looking for those keywords. Like, I want to hear that someone sitting across the table from me or over Zoom in an interview wants to help people. I'm looking for that H word. That's a huge indicator as to whether or not that person's going to be a good fit here.
Well, so that's interesting because as we talk a little bit about that, what makes a great advisor, obviously you have a strong focus then on being a people-centered organization.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about that in the larger view of individuals and personal connection, what about the larger industry in financial planning, investment? Is that going to continue to be the model, or do you think it's now becoming more automated and will be driven by individual investors on apps?
Mm. That's a good question. It's something that certainly, comes up at all the conferences that I go to. I draw the analogy to tax preparation and TurboTax. TurboTax has been around for years. People have had the ability to do their own taxes. And TurboTax has gotten better and better. And, it walks you through a process, it asks you questions. But what I found with working with clients is that there's a point at which their tax situation gets too complicated for TurboTax. And there's a point at which they need to ask someone a question, or it's so complicated, they're stressful, they're stressed out about whether or not they've done it right? And that's the point when someone needs a qualified tax preparation professional. And so to draw that analogy to our industry, investment management, and financial planning, yeah, you can absolutely manage your own investments, with a little bit of education. But there's a point at which your investments gets to be so large, or you begin to rely upon them for your livelihood to such a degree that, gosh, you might want to sit across the table from someone that's been doing this a while and ask some questions. You might want them to take it over for you. And so I think that analogy is going to ring true for our industry going forward. Absolutely, it's going to be better and easier, and the client experience for managing investments on Amazon or on Vanguard or whatever the platform is going to improve. But I think there are always going to be those folks that really want to sit across the table from a person, look them in the eye, and get advice and get some confidence. And there's going to be those folks whose situation warrants that.
Well, so in thinking about the market, and it does seem that having a person who spends all day thinking about what's happening, market doesn't seem to always be driven by facts. Sometimes seems to be driven by opinions. How much time do you think it really takes someone like yourself to really, not that even you can time the market, but to put enough information in to make good decisions? It doesn't seem like this is a quick, like you could just figure it out from one article, right?
No, I don't think so. And to your question as to how long it takes to gain the experience to be able to do it well, I don't know. It's going to be different for everyone. But honestly, some of the most valuable studies that I've had have been less about the markets and more around cognitive biases and neuroscience. Because to your point, the markets are sometimes based on opinion and emotion, especially in the short term. Over the long term, we expect the value of companies to generally reflect how much they're earning and their sales and how much they're forecasted to earn in the future. But over the short term, the stock prices can get completely disconnected from reality. And so learning how to manage that erratic behavior, learning how to see through it and understand that what is real and what is emotion. I think that's a really, really important skill. And I think that's a lot of the value that we add to our clients, keeping them invested when things seem really, really scary, or keeping them from being too aggressive when things seem really positive, like they have recently. That kind of coaching, especially that psychological coaching is really important to being a successful investor.
I want to dive back into this because obviously there's a lot of great information in there, but I think I was all of a sudden triggered on a question of, is your work really based around the idea that if you have a ton of money, come and visit Wacker Wealth? Or is this something even the average person should start now thinking about having someone advise them how to think about the long term on their financial planning and whether investments are right, or if it's just something smaller to start?
Yeah. Well, you hit on really a point of tension for me personally, because as someone who, wakes up in the morning and wants to help people, my hope is that we could help everyone. But the reality is it's time consuming work. It's complicated. There are a lot of factors, and financial advisors, that we have to feed our families. And so in order to be compensated for that time, oftentimes it justifies a certain fee or a certain level of wealth to justify that advice. And that's just the reality. And so I do think average folks, most of the folks in our community can get invested. I absolutely think that people should not be intimidated by the investment markets. There are some great, mutual funds or programs today. We call them robo-advisors, some great ways to get really good diversification in a way that's really simple. And that allows people to get invested and start seeing their assets grow, beyond inflation, and really start saving for retirement. And then when you build up a certain level of complexity, that's the point at which you want to start going and talking to an advisor. That doesn't mean that people in their 20s aren't going to face difficult financial decisions, and some of which may warrant, advice from a professional. And there are financial planners. Wacker Wealth Partners, does not do this, but there are financial planners that will work on an hourly basis. And so that can be a good option for folks that just need kind of, hourly type planning to deal with a specific issue, or perhaps create a long-term, savings plan.
Awesome. That's great advice for those at all levels, and obviously super important for the long term for people as they move on in their lives.
Yeah.
So let's kind of jump right back, to the market. And obviously talking about a little bit of that, bringing back to the emotion. The market's been going pretty steadily up overall since the pandemic began, which seems a bit counterintuitive. As an advisor, what has been your kind of overall advice to your clients during this time?
Well, it's been primarily to stay the course. I think we're having to remind our clients and ourselves every single day that we cannot predict the future. And the moment you attempt to do that, you are likely to be reminded of your humility. And so, it's just continuing to coach them. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what Congress is going to do next week. There could be a stimulus plan that completely upends the economic fundamentals of the situation. And so stay the course. We work with every single client to identify a certain level of risk in their portfolio that would be appropriate for them. And once we've determined that portfolio, that mix of primarily stocks and bonds, that portfolio is meant to be ridden through these storms and through these ups and downs. And so that initial work is really important. And then the commitment to that work through the ups and downs of the market is just as important to be successful. So we've been spending a lot of time around those concepts this year.
Well, and I'm sure it's so important because you hear all sorts. The press has done a lot of talking about things like Bitcoin or GameStop that with all the press and people wanting to maybe jump on that bandwagon. From your perspective, I'd love to get your thoughts. Did David slay Goliath in the GameStop AMC stock maneuvers, or is this likely just to have been a blip on the radar?
Well, I don't think it's a blip, but I wouldn't use the David and Goliath analogy. I think a WrestleMania analogy is probably more appropriate. So, the way I've tried to visualize this is that, and for those of you who haven't seen WrestleMania, and admittedly, I haven't seen WrestleMania in probably 30 years, but I remember as a kid, you had like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, and you have a bunch of wrestlers in a gigantic ring, and they're all just trying to beat each other up. And maybe there's a team, component to it. But I think with the GameStop situation, what you had was, on one team, you had some really large investors, some large hedge funds. And on the other team, you also had really large investors. That's what people don't realize, is that some of the folks in the Reddit forum and some of the folks that were trying to upend the hedge funds, they were actually really wealthy individuals with really large stakes in the GameStop scenario. But they were also backed by this really large crowd of smaller investors, and that seems to get all the press. But what happened is these guys got in a ring and started beating each other up. And the most important thing to come out of it all is that in the process of beating each other up, they exposed some really interesting things about the ring, about the venue. For instance, the fact that GameStop is selling trade information, for that their investors are making, and so that the company that they're selling it to can actually get in front of those trades and profit off that information. I don't think very many Robinhood investors realized that prior to this whole thing, and I think it took a wrestler to knock something over and reveal that truth for folks to wake up to that. So I think that is the most interesting thing to come out of all of this. There have been stock bulletin boards, as long as I can remember, where people will talk up various kind of pump and dump schemes, if you've heard of those, where you talk up a stock and then whoever gets out first, gets to profit, but ultimately a lot of people get left holding the bag. Those things have been around forever. This is frankly just another one of those, with maybe a little bit more of an interesting story. And so, what's really sad to me is that a lot of folks were really kind of duped into the momentum of this. And I read a story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, I think, around this gentleman who took out a $20,000 personal loan, from like a payday lender, and he put it all in GameStop and lost most of it. And now he's still got to make those payments on that personal loan, and he's going to have a really, really difficult time recovering from this. So those are the real victims here, the folks that, I think were excited by the Reddit forum, got involved with money that they really couldn't afford to lose, and are going to spend a long, long time paying for it.
Yeah, and I would say that probably the most interesting thing I took from that was that you knew what WrestleMania was, and that Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, because that's my era. But second most interesting is certainly the idea of how people bought into that kind of momentum without really understanding that GameStop might have been a dying stock to begin with, which is why there were people shorting it. And now you're paying $200 to $300 a share for it. Bad things can happen to people. And it's part of that. Why an advisor is obviously having an advisor at your door is certainly helpful. Sure. So are there any kind of other really kind of common misunderstandings about the market you encounter?
Well, you just hit on one of them, and that is that folks oftentimes don't understand the connection between the price of a stock and the company's fundamentals. They might look at two stocks and say, well, this one's priced at $100 a share, and this one's priced at $50 a share. This one's twice as good or twice as big. I mean, they oftentimes don't know what that difference means. And, I'd like to just tell our listeners today, it doesn't mean anything. Companies can issue a disparate number of shares. So you can have one company with 1,000 shares outstanding and another company with 100 shares outstanding. And so, the prices of that per share amount can vary widely, and it really doesn't tell you anything about the value of the company or the success of the company. And so when you're analyzing stock, you got to look at that price, relative to other things, that price relative to how much the company makes, that price relative to how much cash the company has on hand, relative to its sales. There's a lot that goes into analyzing whether a company is fairly valued or appropriately valued. And most people don't look at any of that. They look at the price of the stock. Oh, it looks like it's doing well. I would say that's the second big misconception or problem with individual investors, is that they oftentimes buy the things that have already done well, which isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes things that have done well will continue to do well. But oftentimes, if something has done well, it means it's expensive, or maybe it means like it's already had its day in the sun, and now it's going to get attacked by competitors and it's going to fight new resistance. So you never want to look in the rearview mirror when you're investing. You want to really analyze the fundamentals of a company, of a particular market, of a sector, before thinking about its future.
So interesting. And again, this is obviously, you've spent 20 years getting to know all of this. This isn't something you grab overnight. If folks are interested in the best way to connect with you and the team at Wacker Wealth, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, there's a link on our website, lots and lots of information on our website about our firm, about our team, and our history. But if folks did want to connect, they want to inquire about whether or not we would be a good fit for them, there's a great spot on our website. Click Get Started, and we'll take care of the rest.
That's awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. We always end on this question. Would love to know, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, I'm in the middle of remodeling my bathroom, Jim. So I'm going to be swinging a hammer, and maybe putting up a little drywall, all kinds of fun things this weekend. Looking forward to those.
Wow, that's good luck to that. Good luck to you with all of that. You're a braver person than I am. So thanks so much for being here today, sharing with our listeners and viewers Super, super appreciative of you taking the time. I know you're super busy.
Well, thank you, Jim. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much to all of you for eating lunch with us. We hope to see you next week. Same time, same place. We'll be talking with Rick Stolmeyer, Executive Chair at MindBody, and catch up on what he's been up to lately. If you have questions for Ryan and our guests at any time, feel free to add them into the chat below, and our guests will try to get to a chance to answer them when they get a moment. We appreciate all of you for tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there.